Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. I never thought I'd find myself in Alex Thompson's dimly lit office, clutching an envelope filled with secrets that threatened to rip my world apart. It's funny how the mundane can suddenly turn sinister. Alex handed me the envelope with a grimace. I really apologize, Mr. Harrison. It's tough delivering news like this. Inside, photos and a DVD, evidence of Sarah's betrayal. My Sarah, who'd promised fidelity, wrapped up in a lie so extensive it felt like a physical blow. I hadn't watched the DVD yet. Something about seeing it all play out in motion felt final, irreversible. But I needed to know, didn't I? How deep the knife had gone. Any clue how long this has been happening? My voice was steady, almost detached. A necessary armor. Alex shuffled papers, his eyes not meeting mine. At least 10 years. Maybe 12. His voice was flat, factual. 10 years. A decade of lies. Sarah had been with her boss, Ethan Parker, since Emma was a baby. Since those nights I'd rocked our daughter to sleep, believing in the sanctity of our home, our marriage. The irony was a cruel sting. Part of me, the part that still loved the woman I married, wanted to find an excuse for her. It's what led me to demand DNA tests for the kids. What if they weren't mine? What if every part of our life together was a lie? And the STD tests? God, the thought of what she might have exposed me to made my stomach churn. Alex noted my silence and added, Ethan's been involved with several married women. Not just Sarah. His attempt at comfort, perhaps. Misplaced. I scoffed, a bitter sound. Was there anything at our place? Any encounters? I had to know if my home was tainted too. They never did anything at your place. You asked for cameras and mics when you hired me. Your bedroom is clean, Alex assured me. Thanks for that, at least. Cold comfort, but I'd take it. The ride home was a blur of red taillights and the echo of my own harsh breathing. The house was dark when I arrived, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. Sarah was at a business dinner. Or so she said. Who knew anymore? I sat in the dark living room, the unwatched DVD burning a hole on the coffee table. My mind raced. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about the years stolen from me, from us, from our children. Was revenge what I wanted? It seemed a petty word for the scale of betrayal. No, not revenge. Justice. Ethan would pay for disrupting my family, for stealing my wife's loyalty. And Sarah, I'd confront her, demand the truth. Perhaps seeing her crumble under the weight of her own deceit would bring some solace. But first, the lawyer. Natalie Simmons came highly recommended. Especially good with cheaters, Alex had said. I'd call her in the morning. Legal avenues first, then the personal reckoning. I sat alone in the dark until the streetlights flickered on. The DVD remained unwatched, but not forgotten. A decisive step for another day. Tonight, I planned. Tonight, I seethed. Tomorrow, the fallout. It's a cold thing, sitting in the dark, waiting for the person you love to come home so you can confront them with their own betrayal. That's what I did, sitting there, the clock ticking louder than my heartbeat, each tick a reminder of a year stolen. She walked in at 9:43 p.m. Her smile froze when she saw me in the living room. No lights on except the faint glow from the streetlight filtering through the blinds. Michael? What are you doing sitting here in the dark? Is everything okay? Sit down, Sarah. My voice was flat, colder than I intended. No, exactly as cold as I intended. She hesitated, a frown creasing her forehead. But she sat. Is Emma okay? Her voice was filled with genuine concern, always the mother first. It stung, seeing how easily the caring mother mask slipped on. Emma's fine. This isn't about her. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Silence makes people nervous, makes them fill it with whatever's in their head. Sarah was no exception. Then why, Sarah? I cut her off, the photos from Alex spread out on the coffee table in front of me. The flicker of fear in her eyes told me she knew exactly what this was now. Michael, 10 years, Sarah. Maybe 12. I stood up, pacing now. Each step was a year, a lie, a betrayal. With Ethan Parker. How could you? She was crying now, the tears coming easy and fast. I was going to tell you. When? On our 50th anniversary? Or were you waiting for me to die of some disease he gave you to pass on to me? The harshness in my voice shocked even me. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. It wasn't like that. It started as I don't know. It was a mistake. A mistake? For 12 years? That's not a mistake, Sarah. That's a choice. You chose him, every day. My voice broke, the last word almost a whisper. We never meant to hurt you. Her own voice was a whimper, the words pathetic, even to her ears, I think. You never meant for me to find out. I slammed my hand on the table, photos fluttering to the floor, a visual fall of our life. You played the doting wife and mother so well. Michael, please let me explain. No more lies. I shouted, then lowered my voice, a quiet fury now. I spoke to a lawyer today. Natalie Simmons. Her eyes widened, the name recognized. You're going to divorce me? I'm thinking about it, I said. But first, I want the truth. All of it. If there's going to be any chance of anything, I need the truth. The next hours were a blur of confessions, her words painting pictures of lies, secret meetings, stolen moments. All while I was working late, or home with Emma. Every confession twisted the knife deeper. But I needed to hear it. Not just for the potential court case, but for me. To understand how far we had fallen. How far she had fallen. And Ethan? Oh, he'd pay too. I'd make sure of it. The wheels were already in motion. Alex wasn't just good at finding the truth. He knew how to make the guilty pay. Revenge, redemption, call it what you want. I was going to get justice for those stolen years. And it started tonight, with the truth. Walking into Natalie Simmons' office felt like stepping into a ring. The air was thick with the scent of leather and determination. I was here to fight, to reclaim a semblance of the life that was stolen from me. Natalie was sharp, her eyes like hawks, catching every flicker of emotion across my face. You understand the gravity of what you're undertaking, Mr. Harrison? Her voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. Ido. My reply was clipped, my jaw set. I wasn't just here for a divorce. I was here to dismantle everything she had taken for granted. Natalie spread the documents I'd brought on her desk, photos, emails, a timeline of deceit. This is substantial. You're looking at a favorable outcome, but it will get dirty. Are you prepared for that? I nodded, feeling the weight of every sleepless night fueling my resolve. I want full custody of Emma. And I want him, Ethan, to pay. She leaned back, considering. Custody can be argued strongly on your behalf, especially with your evidence of her indiscretions. As for Ethan, we can go after him for alienation of affections, maybe even emotional distress. Good. The word was a bullet, shot from a gun loaded with years of betrayal. The first meeting with Sarah and her lawyer was a chess game. Her lawyer, a slick-haired man with a too-tight suit, tried to smooth talk his way through the proceedings. My client is deeply remorseful and willing to discuss terms of reconciliation. I almost laughed. Remorseful? Now? Tell your client there's nothing left to reconcile. I cut in. my voice cold enough to frost the glass of the conference room. Natalie shot me a look, a slight nod acknowledging my play. Sarah sat across from me, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. When our eyes met, the hurt in hers was palpable. But so was my disdain. This isn't just about what you did, Sarah. It's about what you've continued to do for over a decade. Her lawyer cleared his throat. We are prepared to offer a generous settlement and shared custody. No. My interruption was sharp, a cleaver through bone. I want full custody. She can have supervised visits until I decide otherwise. Sarah gasped. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, a small, patronizing gesture. Michael, please, think of Emma. I did think of Emma. Every night. How could I explain to my daughter that her mother had shattered our family for a fling that turned into an affair that lasted longer than some marriages? We'll see you in court. Natalie's voice was smooth, professional. As we left, her whisper was almost conspiratorial. We'll bleed them dry, Michael. Every conversation with Natalie was a step in a plan meticulously crafted around my need for retribution. Each legal document signed was a seal on my commitment to this path. But the nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, replaying each revelation, the sound of Sarah's voice confessing her sins, it ate at me. I found solace in plotting, in imagining the look on Ethan's face when he was served. In the courtroom, the sharp snap of Natalie's briefcase was like music, a prelude to the battle. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a declaration of war. And I was ready to burn everything to the ground to get justice for the life they had stolen from me. There's something about preparing to face the person who betrayed you that sharpens every sense. As I sat across from Sarah at the mediation table, the room stark and sterile, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield, armed with nothing but the truth and a cold desire for justice. I've been thinking a lot about everything, Sarah started, her voice shaking slightly. It was the first time we were speaking without lawyers flanking us. About us. There is no us anymore, Sarah. There hasn't been for a long time. My voice was steady, devoid of the warmth it once held for her. She flinched, as if the words were physical blows. Michael, I know I made unforgivable mistakes. But I'm asking you to think about Emma. She needs both of us. Emma needs stability and honesty, two things you might struggle to provide, I countered sharply. Each word was measured, calculated to cut. She needs to be protected from this chaos you created. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm her mother, Michael. Doesn't that count for something? It used to count for everything, I replied coldly. Until you decided to throw it all away. We both sat in silence, the air thick with tension. My mind raced, not just with anger, but with a strategic coldness that had settled over me since discovering the affair. Every decision now was a move in a game of chess. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. What do you want, Michael? What will it take to settle this? I leaned forward, my gaze fixed on hers. Full custody. You can have supervised visitation until I'm convinced you're stable enough for more. And I want Ethan out of your life, for good. Her mouth opened slightly, aghast. You can't dictate who I can and I will, I interrupted, my tone final. If it goes to court, I will make sure everyone knows the kind of deceit you're capable of. Think about what that will do to your reputation, to your future. The threat hung between us, heavy and menacing. Sarah looked down, defeated, her hands trembling as she considered the ramifications. And if I agree? What happens then? You start rebuilding your life, Sarah. Without me. And maybe, just maybe, you become the kind of person Emma can look up to again. It was harsh, maybe even cruel, but necessary. I'll agree to your terms, she murmured, her voice barely audible over the ringing silence. Good. The single word was like a gavel striking, sealing her fate along with my own. As I stood to leave, a part of me wanted to look back to see if there was any trace of the woman I once loved. But I didn't. I couldn't. That part of my life was over. I walked out with a mixture of relief and a hollow victory. Winning this battle might protect Emma, might give me peace, but at what cost? The war had just begun, and I knew there were no true winners here. Only survivors. The courthouse was cold, sterile, almost surgical. Every step I took through those echoing halls felt like a march towards a battleground where the weapons were legal documents and the casualties were the remnants of a marriage I once believed in. Natalie walked beside me, her heels clicking like a metronome, set to the rhythm of impending confrontation. "I've reviewed their counteroffer," she whispered, her voice a blade slicing through the quiet. "They're desperate, trying to push for joint custody now. They know they're on shaky ground." I nodded, barely registering the anxiety that buzzed through the corridor like electricity. "We stick to the plan. Full custody. Nothing less." When we entered the courtroom, Sarah was already there, her posture rigid, every line of her body screaming defiance. But her eyes, those told a different story. Fear. It was the first time I saw fear there, and it stirred something dark within me. Maybe satisfaction. Maybe pity. I wasn't sure anymore. The judge entered, and the formalities began, a dance of legalities that felt both tedious and tense. When it was my turn to speak, the room fell eerily silent, the kind of quiet that amplifies every word. "Your Honor, the person I married, the person I trusted with my life, with our daughter's life, has repeatedly and systematically destroyed that trust," I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the tempest inside me. "This isn't just about an affair. It's about what the affair says about her judgment, her priorities. Emma needs more than love. She needs protection. She needs consistency." Sarah's lawyer stood, his voice oily with faux sincerity. "Mr. Harrison is understandably hurt. But to sever a child's bond with her mother based on this hurt is both unreasonable and punitive." "It's not punitive to want the best for my daughter," I shot back, my tone sharp as a scalpel. "It's parental." As the proceedings dragged on, Natalie unfolded Sarah's life like a map, showing all the hidden routes she had taken that led us here. Emails to Ethan that weren't just intimate, they were planning a future. Receipts for gifts. Hotel bookings. Each item displayed on the overhead projector was another nail. Then came the bombshell, the one Natalie had held back until just the right moment. A video deposition from Ethan's former assistant, a young woman with nothing to lose and a story to tell. Her testimony of arranging meetings, of overhearing conversations, was damning. "I thought they were breaking up," the assistant said on tape, her voice hesitant. "I mean, Ms. Harrison and her husband. Because of how she talked about him. Like he was already gone." The courtroom was so quiet after the video played that you could hear the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights. Sarah's face had gone pale, her lawyer scribbling notes with a kind of frantic energy that spoke volumes. When it was over, the judge didn't immediately decide. He wanted time to consider the evidence, he said. But walking out of there, even without the gavel's final say, I felt a hollow victory. Sarah avoided my gaze, but I caught a glimpse of her as she was leaving. There was something shattered there, something irreparably broken. In the car, Natalie didn't celebrate. She just drove, the city passing by in a blur of light and shadow. "You did what you had to do," she said finally, a statement, not a question. "Yeah," I replied, watching the familiar yet alien landscape of my life moving past. "I did." And as I sat there, the weight of the day pressing down, I realized that no legal victory could undo the past, could restore what was lost. Emma would be safe, yes. But the cost, the sheer toll it took on all of us, was something I hadn't fully accounted for. Something no court could ever quantify. The verdict came on a Tuesday. Full custody. The words were both a liberation and a heavy chain around my neck, responsibility tightening its grip. As I sat alone in my living room that evening, the silence was not peace, but a looming question of what now? Emma was upstairs, sleeping. I watched her for hours that night, her small form a stark reminder of the stakes. Her life was in my hands, undeniably now. I had fought for this, won this, but the victory tasted like ash. "You did the right thing, Dad," I imagined telling her one day. Would she agree? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. The days that followed were filled with routines, attempts at normalcy that felt like acting in a poorly scripted play. I made breakfast, packed lunches, dropped Emma at school. Smile, wave, repeat. Each smile felt more strained, each wave more mechanical. Then came the weekends. Just Emma and me. I tried to fill them with laughter, with trips to the park, movies, anything to make her smile genuinely. She did smile, but there were moments, quiet stretches where her gaze drifted and her mind wandered to places I couldn't follow. To her mother? Probably. Sarah had visitation rights, supervised, every other Saturday. The first time I saw her post-verdict at a neutral space, a local community center, her presence was a cold jolt. Emma ran to her, no hesitation. Their embrace tore at me, joy and pain intertwined so tightly I couldn't breathe for a moment. "How are you, Michael?" Sarah's voice was cautious, small. "Managing," I replied, the word a shield against further inquiry. She nodded, eyes flickering with something like understanding, or perhaps resignation. We were like two diplomats from warring countries, polite but distant. As weeks turned into months, I watched Emma adapt. Kids are resilient, they say. But it's more than that. They have a way of accepting the world that adults fight against. She accepted this new life, somehow finding space to keep loving both her mother and me, despite the chasm that split her world in two. One afternoon, as I watched her color at the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration, I realized this wasn't just about custody or winning. It was about her, about ensuring these scars didn't define her. "Daddy, do you miss Mommy?" she asked one day, out of the blue, her crayon pausing midair. The question stung, unexpected. "Sometimes," I admitted, honesty winning over pride. "Me too," she said, and went back to coloring. It was a simple exchange, but it shifted something in me. My battles, my victories, what were they to her? Just shadows that shaped her new normal. The legal battles faded into routine. Sarah's visits became less charged, and life found a rhythm. I started to see a counselor, unpacking the layers of anger and betrayal, trying to find a way back to something like peace. And through it all, there was Emma. Watching her grow, seeing her navigate her changed world with a bravery that humbled me, I began to understand that my real job wasn't just to protect her, but to show her how to heal, how to forgive. Because in the end, this wasn't just about endings. It was about beginnings, messy, painful, but real. It was about building something new from the ruins, not just for me, but for her. For us. So, we moved forward, a little stronger each day, a little more whole. Or at least, as whole as we could manage.